Folks at the back, let's take your seats. Alan, Ivana, Dee, Jenny, everybody, let's just settle down for a little while more. We have the star of the evening. We have the lady who has done what so many of us would like to do. She quit her job. She sat down to write a book. With her first novel, she found an agent, which is actually very difficult. Then she found a London publisher, which is also very difficult. And then she found there seems to be a huge market, because within no time she got all this publicity, all these awards, and all these fans, and all this money. She received the prize, as I say, Irish Novel of the Year, which was worth 20 grand. She then got this little prize a couple of weeks ago from the University of London, which was worth 5 grand. She's here to give away that money tonight for whoever can answer this question. I'm only joking, she's bought 2 copies of her book. Her book is called The Amusements, and her name is Aingeala Flannery. You have been very patient to sit there quietly waiting for all these other people and not touch a drop of that. Oh, actually, that part isn't really true, is it? We had to hurry up the previous guest because I thought we had a narrow window to catch you while you're still lucid. To be managers?
Not quite, Gerry. No. I'll do my best.
Okay, so well done on the success you're having with the book. Why don't you tell us a little bit about the book?
So The Amusements isn't actually my first novel. I'm going to correct your introduction as I go along, if that's all right.
I'm going to be fired. I mean, I just made 5 mistakes tonight. There's going to be complaints into the circular.
It's my second novel, but the first one wasn't published, so I have one under the bed. That is kind of, getting all the bad writing out. So, The Amusements is a novel, but it is told from the point of view of 14 different characters, all of whom live in, that's a bit better, all of whom live in the seaside town of Tramore in County Waterford. And there's 2 principal characters, Helen and Stella. They're teenage girls, and it's supposed to be a coming of age story as to how they grow up, and one of them leaves and the other one doesn't leave, and what happens to them. But it's a portrait of the community, very Irish, I think. Yeah.
Why did you pick Tramore?
I picked Tramore because I'd read a short story by William Trevor called Honeymoon in Tramore that I really, really enjoyed. And I know Tramore very well, and I thought, I've never read anything else about Tramore. That's an awful pity. It's a really colourful kind of place. Anyone who's been there will know that. A typical seaside town, but so visual. And I thought that would make a really, really great, it's a great place to write stories. And so I wrote a short story that was shortlisted for the Bath Award. I'd never published anything, and that was my first published story. And then I thought, I did that quite well. I'll write another short story. So I wrote another short story, and that won the Harper's Bazaar short story competition in 2019. And at that point I thought, I'm quite good at writing about Tramore, and there's that novel rotting under the bed, maybe I just leave that there and I'll keep writing about Tramore. So I based the novel on the story that won the Harper's Bazaar competition, and that was the origin story. And I just built, that was a story about Helen, and I just built all these characters. I just kind of wondered what happened to her, what happened to her family. Did she grow up to be happy? Did she have friends? Did she leave Tramore? And in answering those questions, I kind of built this story around her, where it was all the local shopkeepers, the circus, her best friend going to school, her teacher. And Helen is a very talented artist. I was really interested in Colin. I'm kind of humbled by what we just saw there. But it's basically about a girl who is talented enough to go to art college, but comes from a very working class family and doesn't go because she can't. That's what happens to Helen in it. So there's a lot of stuff about art in it as well. So,
did you feel a little bit like Helen? Is Helen kind of taken from your own personal experience?
Well, no, I couldn't draw a straight line. I mean, I'm shocking, no, it's not, but it is taken from the things that are interesting to me in my material, which is, it just seems to be family and class are the 2 things, and creativity, and how it's a real, not everyone gets the opportunity to be creative, and that was the theme really of this. Of the Amusements, that she's denied the opportunity, even though she's really talented, she is denied the opportunity to be an artist. So yeah.
Well, I feel there's a parallel in your own life, because we'll talk about it now in a moment, because first of all, you quit your job, right? And anybody, if you're not familiar with the name Angela Flannery, or if it rings a bell, possibly if you listen to Today FM any time in the last 20 years, you probably heard, here's the news with Angela Flannery, or here's such and such a programme produced by Angela Flannery. So you had a very good career going in Today FM, and then one day you said, screw this, I'm going to write a book. And I get the feeling that there's the creativity to write, and not, I mean, you're obviously writing a lot for your work in Today FM, but you weren't writing fiction. And obviously the need to produce a piece of fiction was so great that you jacked it all in.
Well, yeah, I mean, look, I was 30 when I went back to... We were in disclosure. I know Gerry for a long time. We were in college together in 20. What year was it? The millennium, 2000. What fucking year is it now? 2000, 23 years ago.
Almost
and so when we came out, I went into Today FM on a placement and stayed there and worked in the newsroom. But that was working in news. But I also, while I was still at college, if you remember, started writing for the Irish Independent, and I got some of my articles published during our masters when we were students. I kept writing for the Irish Independent the whole way when I was working for Today FM. When I was staff job in Today FM, I was really lucky. This is back in the good old days when you could when it wasn't the gig economy, and I did a good job there and all of that. But I loved writing, and as much as I loved radio, I needed to write every day. So I worked for the Independent, and I still work for them. But I had a restaurant column for about 12 years, 14 years maybe. Loads of kind of opinion columns. I still do the occasional opinion piece for the Sinjo on things that matter to me. But really, in about 2017, I was like, I'm nearly 50, I have to stop, I have to write the novel. Like, I was secretly writing short stories that I just thought weren't good enough, and so I kept just writing the columns. I was doing that to get my writing kicks, because I just was always writing. So it wasn't like, people kind of, it came out of nowhere. It didn't come out of nowhere. I was writing every single day because I needed to, writers write, that's what they do, So, yeah.
So actually, it's similar to Colin, who was saying, he gets up early in the morning and he can write all day if he gets a chance. Are you like that as well? Oh, sorry, Colin paints all day, I meant to say. Do you write all day?
I'm a binge writer. If I start writing, I could be there from 7 in the morning until 3 in the morning. Like, I will not move. It's Weetabix, get more Weetabix. It's like no one gets fed in the house. That's kind of what goes on. And the rest of the time I'm showering or walking, thinking about it, and the characters are in my head, and that's the way that it works. But then I could go for a long time without writing, and that's kind of, you have to go through that as well, that frustration, a long time without writing productively. I'm always at the desk, but it's all just in your head. You're and I'm sure Colin would say, I think anyone who's an artist, that's your practice. You just walk around living in your head a lot of the time. And that's what I didn't have the time to do when I was a journalist, because journalists are what the term used to be news junkie, we were just constantly, I needed to know when I was the news editor in Today FM, I had to read all the papers, I had to watch Vincent Brown every night, I had to watch Prime Time, I had to listen to whatever, it was 5-7 Live at the time, Drive Time, whatever, I had to just constantly be monitoring. And you just didn't have the time to kind of sit back and wonder and look at things and let ideas percolate in your mind. The time to be creative. It's a very different dynamic and a very different headspace to being a journalist. To being a news journalist is anti-creativity. Your head is too busy. You don't have space, and you're telling stories all the time, but you're never looking at the humanity behind the stories. And I was really interested in that. There were people behind those news stories, and I think that's in the amusement, the trickle down of government policy down into ordinary people's lives every day, and what it really means to them, and that was really important to me. It's not an overtly political book, but that was very important to me, yeah.
Is it true that you gave up your job, which is true, ran out of money, and had to Airbnb your house while you were still writing the book?
Yeah, I did. But you're so judgy. You're like my mum who said, but you're not just get a job in a bookshop. She was so disgusted, just like, I can't believe you're not on the radio. All your aunts and uncles are going mad. It's like, oh my God, she's like, they all thought I was just, like you say, it's the menopause, isn't it? Yes, Gerry, I ran out of money, and me and my son had to leave and stay. I thank some of my good friends are here tonight who gave me their homes while they were on holiday, and I stayed in their houses over 2 or 3 months while I Airbnb'd my house and got my shit together, because that's what you have to do. And I got a couple of other part-time gigs. You know, I mean, I was working for Children's Books Ireland. I was managing the Laureate and Oak, the Children's Literature Laureate, and I worked for the Dublin Review Literary Magazine. I do all their social media, and I do a podcast for them. So I picked up bits and pieces of work that are conducive to writing, that weren't taking me, where I was around creative people, and that really helped me. You know, but yeah, I did. I irresponsibly, but I stupidly said that in an interview with a journalist at the beginning, and I knew the minute I said it as a journalist, that's going to be the headline. I Airbnb my house. You know, it's just like, oh my God, I have a house. You know, I felt so stupid, because the homelessness crisis, aren't you lucky to have a house to Airbnb? So I agree, it wasn't an issue for me at all. You know. And giving up the job, my dad was a tradesman, my brother's a tradesman, I have a family of tradesmen, they're all sole traders. And I was always working for the Indo, freelancing anyway, and most people I was working with, once Dennis O'Brien bought Today FM, were in a gig economy, and so I knew, like, you know, I was surrounded by freelancers. It wasn't that frightening. I had enough experience to, you know, just live on beans, and I don't care about cars and handbags and holidays and hairdressers and all that stuff, so it was fine.
Well, you've got... So it's good to know you don't really care about money, and now you have to get these big money prizes.
Yeah.
What might you be doing with this?
I got the house dry lined. I mean, I'd just like to say, if there's anyone here from the Green Party, only middle class people can afford all of the stuff that you're offering, right? So, I got a builder I know who I play tennis with to come in and dry line the house, because it was falling down. I mean, literally there was mould everywhere. My son has really bad asthma, and that's how I spent the money. And now the next one, I was just saying to my mum last night, she's like, oh, and you're going, because I'm going to Liverpool to collect the John McGahern, which is an amazing thing, because my mother went to Liverpool in the 60s on the mail boat, or on the cattle boat as it was then, into Birkenhead, and trained as a nurse in Liverpool. I met my dad there, and he was from a mining family in Lancashire, and they ended up moving back here. They kind of emigrated in reverse in the late 60s back here. So half my family, like Flannery's a very Irish name, but half my family are in the north of England, and so for them and for my family and my background, for the University of Liverpool to award me this is like, holy shit, it's amazing, you know. But my mum was saying to me last night, oh, you're going off now to get that big check, just like you. She got this and she got that, you know. And her first thing is, what are you wearing? And the second thing is, what are you spending it on? You know. And I was like, well, it'll pay the tax bill for the first one, because, by the way, Charlie Hoy did not make everything tax-free for artists. It's only on your book advance. That's tax-free. That's all. Everything else, like the 20 quid that you gave me tonight for the pizza, I'll have to pay tax on it.
We won't declare it. We won't declare it. I didn't realise that. Obviously, anything I've ever written didn't earn enough money, but the royalties that come in after the advance are taxed.
No, anything that comes in from the book itself isn't. But any events you do, anything,
and prize money.
Prizes, Arts Council bursaries are tax free, but everything else, prizes, they're all taxed.
It's tough going.
That's all right.
So tell us about your next book.
What? I'm writing it. That's about it. Yeah. It's not set in Tramore. It's set in Mullingar, New York, and Dublin. It's set in Dublin 8, actually. There's an awful lot of... Well, no, actually, it's Stamer Street. Some people say Stamer Street. It's Stamer Street. I always call it Stamer Street. Stamer Street, isn't it? Yeah.
I can see Ivana shouting at the back. The question is, what constituency?
It is.
What constituency? Dublin based South, right?
Yeah, it is. It is Stamer Street. I know that from when I used to do the deliveries for Pinhead's Pizza when I was a student, because we used to deliver down there, and everyone who lived there called it Stamer Street. But then someone said to me, "Actually, I think you'll find it's Stamer Street." And I was like, I think so.
This area is coming up all the time. So
they're just reinventing it. So and there is there's a bit of historical fiction around the Lithuanian Jews that moved to Ireland in the end of, the last century. Wasn't the last century Victorian? Whatever that was, the 20th. The beginning of the 20th century. And who then moved on to New York. And anyway, it's early days, Gerry, with that one, but I'm kind of looking forward to getting in deep with it. But do you want me to read a bit?
Oh, we'll ask the audience.
I mean, I won't read a lot.
We can do a show of hands. Anybody not like Angela to read? Joan.
No, I'm supposed to wear varifocals, but I can't see anything with them, so I'll just hold it really close. Yeah, no, I can't. I've got really weird eyesight. It's fine. Mine's 4 in one eye, 1 in the other. No, I don't think anyone's going to have that. So, it was the off-season and the local youngsters were up to no good in Tip Phelan's caravan park. He wasn't about to begrudge them a few flagons in the dunes until he got a phone call from the Garda sergeant telling him a bad element was hanging around. Would you consider installing security cameras or a couple of Alsatians? That was the way with the guards. They'd make a suggestion, and if you ignored it, you'd be done for tax or speeding or any else shite. The call would have to be acted on, but you were only courting trouble with dogs and cameras, so Tip put a small ad in the Irish Independent instead. Wanted, caretaker to live rent-free by the sea. He was known as Tipperary because the only song he ever sang was Sliabh Naman. In the back room of the Grand on a Saturday night, nobody would deny he had a voice. There was a want in it that could only be understood by men since it afflicted them alone, an unassailable scourge for which there was no end or cure. Whenever he cleared his throat to sing, a shut up to fuck swept over the bar. Hush, 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 all the way down to the lounge. Tip closed his eyes tight against the silence and began. Alone, all alone by the wave-washed strand, and alone in a crowded hall. The hall it is gay and the waves they are grand, but my heart is not here at all. His real name was Michael Phelan, but nobody in Tramore, apart from his wife Verona, knew it. She called him Tip anyway, and he called her V, or VP, when they were alone and she gave him the look, knowing it would drive him demented. They could be at it half the night. And often they were. The next day, he'd be addled with desire and a profound ache in his bones. Early on in the marriage, when he was still hurling, he'd sleep out of temptation's way in the spare room. A measure he was forced to take after a bionic all-nighter left him in ribbons for the county final. The sentiment on the sideline was that he'd been brutal and they took him off at half-time. But the match was beyond salvation. Oh, V was lethal all right, or at least she had been before the twins came along. These days, she was indifferent to him. It was like living with a cat. When she wasn't changing the babies, she was nursing them, one on each nipple, their little fat legs kneading her stomach like it was dough. She was exhausted, destroyed. He begged her to patch things up with her mother, for the love of God. Verona bundled her breasts back into the sling she'd taken to wearing in place of a bra and zipped her fleece up to the chin. Hell will freeze over, she said, before I talk to that bitch again.
I do want to ask you, just getting back to writing your first book and all that, because there are people in the audience who would love to do what you've done. And so I'd like to ask you a couple of questions. One is, how did you go about getting an agent? Second is, how do you become a writer? In other words, I think you've already answered it by saying writers write, but there's probably a little bit more you can add to it. And thirdly, I'd like to ask you about the style of writing, because the particular style that you chose, which is a lot of characters, a particular place, and character development, mightn't be the way other people write. And I'd just like you to address those three issues, please.
Okay, so writers write. I felt that, you know, because I had a profile as a journalist, I mean, it wasn't a major profile, it wasn't like everybody knew who I was, but I really wanted to know, independently of my journalism, that I was able to write creatively and to write short stories and write novels. So I entered competitions anonymously. I didn't submit to anyone. So that was how I went about it in the beginning. I started just writing stuff where there was blind submissions. I did a course in the Irish Writers Centre with David Butler, who's still my mentor, and I would, you know, I'm still part of a writing group with, they're all unpublished writers other than me actually, but we meet weekly. I've stopped at the moment because I'm deep in the next novel, but I will, you know, I regularly meet with them. and that's been really important. So I would say to somebody that to find a writing group, the Irish Writers Centre is brilliant for courses. I entered the novel fair in the Irish Writers Centre with the first novel, Jove Laughed it was called, and it was one of the winners of that. And that was enough to get me into the MFA in creative writing in UCD. So I went to Harold's Cross Credit Union, got out a loan, and accepted the place where Anne Enright was teaching. And I was like, talk about fangirl. I was just, oh my God. It was, you know, kind of, yeah. It was embarrassing. But anyway, we shouldn't talk about that. So there's an incredible creative writing department in UCD, and I was in a class that was just, it was really good. It was really like competitive in a very positive way, not unlike our journalism year actually, in that people were all very different, and it was kind of, you know, that quality was very high, so you were always trying to not let the side down. It kind of felt like you were playing a team sport and you just needed to be as fit as everyone else, and that was kind of how I treated it for the year. And everyone in the year was published, like there was 5 of us in there, and you know, we've all been published. So that was how that happened. And then COVID happened, and it was like, I'd met Anne Enright at a couple of events afterwards, and she said to me, how's the work? And I thought she meant, have you got a job yet? Right?
Like your mother again, is
yeah, it? You know. And then she was like, I don't mean that, I mean the work, the writing. And I was like, okay, yeah. So I thought, right, I really need to get my act together here. So I started sending extracts from the novel to agents, and I'd entered it into a competition to find an agent and to kind of, you know, I can't remember, the Deborah Rogers Foundation competition, and it didn't make the long list and it didn't make the short list, and one of the judges picked it out of the bin, and she was an agent with Rogers, Coleridge and White, and she rang me and said, is this a full novel? And I said, yeah, it is. And this was just about a week before my 50th birthday, during lockdown, the first lockdown. And I thought, what about, okay, well, here we are, I've no job, it's Armageddon, we're never leaving the house again, it's awful. And she said, I'll be back to you in a couple of months. And she got back to me the next two days later, maybe, and said, I love it and I want to be your agent. And I was like, holy, this is amazing. So that's what happened. So I have this agent, and then it took a couple of years to sell it. Like it did, because as you say, it isn't, you know, it's not a 3-act structure. It's not a difficult read in any way, you know. I mean, you heard me reading it there, that, you know, it's very straightforward, it's very character driven, but it is polyphonic. And I've just, you know, I did try and write it the other way. I've done many, many drafts of it, but the community, I wanted everyone to have a voice. I wanted it to be to be polyphonic in that way. And when people kind of go, well, I kind of, excuse me, but Ulysses did this? You know, that's, you know, it's all right. You know, it is, we're a century later, and it's all right to be sort of, you know, a modernist about literature. It doesn't have to be, it doesn't have to have that 3-act structure. So I think that's what you mean by the style of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, so those are all your questions.
Yeah.
Those are all your questions.
Let's throw it open to the floor. Anybody like to ask Angela a question? Alan? No?
Okay. I was wondering, just to be very topical, so that the writer's strike is looking like it's finishing. I wonder, did AI spur any of that, and how do you feel about that? I know it's a really hot topic for writers.
This gentleman has asked about the writer's strike in Hollywood, wondering if AI had anything to do with Angela's work. Did I get that right?
No.
6 mistakes, all right? Okay, I'm counting. I don't need anybody else to count, okay?
Yes, I didn't write the book.
I just wondering,
there's a robot down in Waterford with a really broad accent who wrote the book.
I was just wondering, do you identify with the writers and the strike in any way?
It's interesting. I was at a writers' event during the summer, and an editor of a literary journal was asked would he publish a story that was written using ChatGPT or AI or whatever, and he said he would, and there was a huge sharp intake of breath, and he kind of said, look, it's inevitable that some stage this is going to become something that artists use. And I couldn't really get my head around it, but I guess that it is. But then I was thinking, you know, there was a piece of work that I was working on, and I'd written a huge amount of it, and I'd written it in the present tense and thought, oh God, this is just a gimmick, it's crap, I just want to put it in the past tense. So I went on ChatGPT and went to put it in the past tense, but it just doesn't work for creative writing, because you have to keep changing from, this is so boring, any writers will get it, from pluperfect to simple past to, you know, and then I kind of tried to change the point of view, the narrative point of view. I thought, well, I really don't want this to be in the first person, I want it to be in the third person, and it did change it, but it started then making up shit. I was like, and then I'm typing to it like it's a person going, you made that up. And they're like, oh, sorry, I thought you wanted me to. It's like, no, I fucking didn't. Like, what? And it was crap what they made. You know, it actually did start making stuff up. That was ChatGPT 3, maybe 4. It doesn't happen. And I kind of thought, okay, we're safe at the moment, because it was rubbish what was given back to me, you know.
Anybody else? Final question for Angela. Alison at the back.
Do you physically write, or do you explain the processes or different?
Do you physically write or do you type?
I type, I type, and that's more as a habit as a journalist, but I have notebooks everywhere, and what I like to do is write down words and write down sentences, and I have like a very nice notebook that's got all my favourite words and sentences and paper clips and little kind of post-it stuff to it, and I kind of open that up when to convince myself I'm working, when I'm not working, and I look at the words and go, it's a lovely word. Let's do something with that word. I think that poet, like, you know, maybe I'll write a poem, I'd be a terrible poet, but I think poets probably work that way as well. You know?
Final question, Jim.
What are your 5 favourite words?
What are your 5 favourite words?
Oh, 5? Most people would say 1.
You mentioned you use words there. I was curious what comes up.
I don't know if I do have 5 favourite. That's like being asked what are your 5 favourite songs, or I don't believe in favourites. It just depends on the mood that you're in. I can never. I always do this with music. I'm like, that's my favourite song. I'm like, no, that's my favourite. I mean, Jesus, if I had more than one child, I'd be screwed. Can you imagine? No, but I can't do it. I couldn't. It just depends. You know.
Okay, I'm going to draw it to a close, but not before giving away 2 of Angela's books, which she's very kindly brought here tonight. So we need a couple of questions. Do you have a quiz question?
Ask Colin.
Colin's gone.
What? Okay.
What is the name of the beer that we were tasting earlier tonight?
I've got a beer question, but it's true. It's Waterford related. Go on. You've got the book. You're not getting it. Yeah. What is the name of the beer? Sorry, it's not called a craft beer now. Local. What's the name?
Community beer.
What's the name of the community local beer that is named after a Waterford landmark that happens to be in Tramore? Yay! Claire Fox wins
What did
the
you
book.
get? What was the answer?
Metalman.
What was the question?
What is the name of the beer? What's the name of the beer that's named after a Waterford landmark that happens to be in Tramore? This microphone is
See,
contained.
I thought it was going to be a Waterford glass kind of thing, you know. Anyway, Claire Fox, formerly of Today FM. I'm sure there's some kind of collusion going on. I think you'll agree it was well worth waiting for to just hear the words of Angela Flannery, especially read by her, and hear her stories. Thank you very much, Angela. Folks, that's the end of the show. Thank you so much for coming out. We're going to do it all again at the end of October and all again at the end of November. So have a look at your WhatsApp or have a look at wherever. Thank you for coming. Don't go home. Stick around. Let's have a chat. Let's have a couple of drinks. Good night.